The aim of this video is to identify and analyse the main townscape features of Oxford. The main definitions of townscape originate from Gordon Cullen in his book, The Concise Townscape. The book identifies the physical and visual elements that allow us to understand spaces and places. Cullen introduced the concept of serial vision, which seeks to manipulate elements of a town in order to create emotion. The route I have chosen starts at point A, Merton Street, which then follows round to Oriel Street. The route then cuts across the High Street through to St Mary's Passage, which then leads on to Radcliffe Square. There is then a left turning down Brasenose Lane, which turns to Turl Street. This then leads on to Broad Street, where a right turn is made towards Magdalen Street East. The route then ends onto St Giles. The route begins at Merton Street, where the first thing to notice is the fencing to the left. This highlights the private space beyond the fence, which seeks to protect Merton College beyond. As one travels further down the street, the archway in the foreground again acts as a barrier to the public, and this time protects those within Corpus Christi College. The arch also acts as a frame, capturing the space beyond it, creating mystery and suspense. The deflection of the building to the right is intriguing, as one would anticipate another space beyond. As one turns the corner, a different space is encountered. In contrast to the previous space, one can feel the openness created by the wide roads. The gaps in the buildings in the background create anticipation that something is beyond both routes, whilst creating the sense of here and there. As one walks down Oriel Street, the streets narrow and the buildings feel taller, creating the sense of enclosure. The narrowness blocks daylight and makes one want to escape into a busier and more open space. At the end of the street, it is clear there is a different space beyond, captured by the projection of the buildings. As one reaches the High Street, the space changes. The entrance to St Mary's Passage is framed by the grand vista to the left, and the large tree obstructing the view creates intrigue as to what is beyond. As one enters the passage, the openness turns to enclosure, caused by the projection of the tall buildings. As one enters Radcliffe Square, the recession of the buildings creates openness, and the scale of the focal point, the Radcliffe camera, creates the element of surprise. Turning left down Brasenose Lane, the space changes, and yet again the street narrows to create an enclosure. Each narrow space seems to lead to a much wider open space, making these streets seem more like passageways than spaces. The tall buildings to the left and the right and the open space at the end of the street show the public and private spaces and lead one to the opening at the end. Once one reaches the end of Brasenose, a different space is encountered upon. Turl Street is wider and far busier than Brasenose, and therefore does not feel as enclosed. The private buildings of Jesus and Exeter colleges, to the left and right, dominate the street and encourage one to walk further to more public space. At the end of Turl Street, one is immediately drawn to the closed vista that is Balliol College. One feels the openness of Broad Street compared to the enclosure felt walking down previous streets. As one walks across Broad Street, a sense of here and there is felt as the street narrows and captures the buildings in the background. Turning immediately right from Broad Street, one enters Magdalen Street East, which again creates a sense of here and there due to St Mary Magdalen Church dominating the scene. Following Magdalen Street East leads one out to St Giles, which is a wide street dominated by the grand vista, the Ashmolean, and the long boulevard of trees that line the street. The trees create enclosure along the street, obstructing the views of the buildings behind. And this marks the end of the route. Looking back at Cullen's idea of serial vision, the route that I walked through creates a series of emotions and is therefore successful in creating a sense of place. The contrast from narrow to wide streets creates the character of Oxford and creates a distinctive townscape. The skills learnt in this exercise will help me to manipulate my own design into a space that benefits from a distinct street pattern and building layout in order to create a desirable living environment.